Nobody likes to see that happening. Was it a surprise? We knew the pressure that he was under, but it happening then, Brent Reid, was everybody expecting it to happen, at this time?
Well, no, I think we all thought Kev would get the start of next year to turn things around, but it's always a concern, Tony, when the club undertakes a review, because there's always going to be findings from that review, and sometimes the findings there was a chance those findings didn't reflect well on Kevin, and that obviously then puts the club in a position where they've got to make a decision. That's what's happened in this case. That review's been done. The findings haven't reflected well on Kev and what's been going on there in terms of the coaching, and the club had to make a decision. I think once they got the review and read the review and saw the damning results of that review, they didn't really have a choice. They had to change things.
Who was the review done on?
Well, it was done on, I assume it was done in the football department.
Yeah, but
it was done, obviously the players had an input into it.
Yeah, who had input?
The staff had an input into it, Kev's staff.
Yep.
Basically everyone involved in the footy club had an input into it.
Okay.
He certainly wasn't expecting it. I heard that he was having dinner just last week, wasn't he, with Trent.
Yeah.
And Ben Teo, who were going to be assistants next season. So he was thinking it was going to be business as usual.
Pete Bedell went for Chinese with Robert Craddock and bumped into him at a Chinese restaurant. Those guys were in the corner, obviously talking about next year. But, obviously you heard him then. He was emotional. Kev's always emotional. And obviously Peter Bedell's done a story in the Courier Mail today about his reaction when he got the news. And he wasn't happy. And I can understand why. But, as I said, once that review came back and obviously Kev, when he found out the results of that review, has obviously reacted like he has, and he hasn't reacted in a necessarily good way. But once that review came back, I think the club didn't have a choice. They had to make a decision. They had to move on and change things. And as I always say, it's a lot easier to change one coach than it is to change a dressing room tone. So he was the guy who had to go.
Tough business, JD.
Yeah, it is. It is. And reviews aren't nice, especially if you're the head and you're getting reviewed, but it also allows you to sit back and take some constructive things on board as well. And it's probably about just trying to absorb what it is, but we don't know at what level the criticism was. It sounds like it wasn't great. So that would be quite confronting for Kevy to hear, for someone who prides himself on giving everything to the club, and to hear that people aren't supportive of that. That would have been tough to hear. And I can understand why he'd be disappointed with that and emotional with that, particularly if these things weren't brought up during the season. I think that would, for me, if things were said during the year, if a staff member had said or a coach said, mate, I don't think we should be doing this, we should be doing this, that's fine. You got to own that if you don't take that advice on board. But if you're hearing things for the first time in a review where people have had opportunity during the season to have those conversations, and that's the brutal truth in NRL world and in any top corporate business, you have to have people that are willing to have that conversation about getting us better.
You also need to be open to that conversation,
100%,
don't you? And that's why it's so important that you have that relationship with your core senior group, where you can be open and you can accept that criticism, and because as a coach, you're there to improve as well and to get better, right? And to bring the group along with you. So, what did you find was the most demanding part of being, a coach these days, JD, with the demand from the playing group in relation to their game growing? Or is it something they're just happy to sit back and take whatever's offered from a coaching staff? Or do they come to you wanting to get better?
Yeah, I think that's one of my biggest learns coming out of the job now and stepping away from out of the fire and being able to look at it clearly. And for me, it's not about what went on. It's about how I was behaving, how I was interacting with the playing group. And one of the things you do really well as assistant, which was one of my strengths, is having that ability to break the game down with individuals and as a group and articulate your messages to help individuals get better. And then when you move into head coaching, you have your other assistants and you sort of step away from that a little bit. But for me, I felt like that was my strength, and I felt like that was the connection that I was able to get with the playing group. So if I had my time again, I would still maintain that, because I feel like that's something that I do really well. But as a player, I know the players, they need you to be able to articulate what is going to get them success, what is going to improve them as a player, what's going to help them potentially crack first grade, what's going to help them stay in a first grade, what's going to help them go to another level and play Origin. And for me as a coach, every week I'm always starting the week reflecting on, okay, how was my messaging last week? Have I got around the room? Have I spoken? And it's a massive job. It's not easy. But to be able to honestly reflect on how you're coaching on a weekly basis, I think it has to happen. You have to be able to do that and be honest with yourself, because it doesn't matter what anybody's saying to you. If you're not honest with yourself, you're not going to be listening anyway. So, but we don't know exactly how all that stuff played out. We don't know if Kevy could have asked for opinions and then wasn't given them. And I've been at clubs where that happens, where people don't tell you the information because they'd rather you just, okay, I'm not going to get the blame if it doesn't go right, so I'll rather say nothing. And for me, I'd rather have people that just go, no, coach, we need you to do this, or we need this, and there's going to be, I can't tell you the amount of conversations like that I've had with Wayne Bennett over the years. We worked there for 5 years. There is no way we agreed all the time, but we would do it in a manner whereas I would explain. Now, one of the things Wayne said to me when I first started with him was, don't just tell me the problem. All right, don't just tell me the obvious. I've been around the game long enough. I know the obvious, but if you're going to bring something to me, bring the solution. Tell me, coach, I think we can do this better. This is how I think it would work, and this is how we train it. So lay it out there in that format so that I go, oh yeah, that's interesting. Okay, let's try that. Or no, I'm happy with what we're doing here. Can you just do this? And yep, no problems, boss. And you walk out of the room, but you've had those conversations and you've been willing to bring those things to the table. Sometimes when it's going bad at clubs, people retract. They don't want to give you information, and that's.
Do they want change?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be part of it. Sometimes the coach might not be receptive to that information, so they feel like there's no point saying anything. So there's all those.
Yeah.
One thing I know in the NRL world, when it's going bad, everybody's looking around thinking, "Man, I don't want to lose my job." So there's a bit of protection policy going on there as well.
We have to ask because you read the reports. Your name was there in terms of potential people to take over from Kevin Walters. What's the situation there?
No, I'm not involved in that whatsoever. Brisbane's a great club. It would be a fantastic club to coach at. But I think there's a certain type of person that needs to go up to Brisbane, and there's a certain type of person that's going to get the respect that you need to be able to do the things you do. And, I knew when I was up there that a New South Welshman was never going to be ideal to coach the Broncos. And I think when Madge gets the nod, which we're all hearing that he will, then that's going to be his biggest challenge. And I think he's done that through New Zealand. He's earned the trust of the New Zealand players and the New Zealand public, and he's done a fantastic job this year with New South Wales as a non-Origin player. And the last few years, it's always been about if you've played Origin, you get the coaching job, and that'll all start again now. But bringing in a guy who's an elite-level coach and took the Origin as a coaching opportunity, I think the way he brought the old boys in, was outstanding. And Gerds, you'd probably attest to that better than most, but I felt like for the first time this year that as a supporter of New South Wales, I wanted to be on that bus. I was really engaged in how everything was playing out, not just on the field, but off the field. And even after the first game, you're like, no, we'll be right. There was just that feel. And if he can bring that to Brisbane, then look out. They'll be a strong side. How
much is fact about Madge and how much is just speculation?
Well, he's the preferred candidate, and he's always wanted that job. So that's a pretty good starting point. So I'd imagine they'll resolve it pretty quickly. Then, because you've got two willing parties, Tony, and when you've got that, it's just a matter of working out the terms.
So is that the ideal thing? Because it seems to me the scenario is that there's a perception that this team, the Broncos, are immense talent, but a lot of them know their own immense talent, and they can be, a little bit problematic in that way. They're, off they go. Whether you need the discipline that is Madge and his history as a coach, is that what they're looking for in terms of their leader?
I think that's part of it. I think they just want a coach who's got a proven track record, and he's got a proven track record. And he has worked with some of those guys like the Payne Haas's of the world, and he knows how to win footy games. He did a great job in New South Wales, but I'm sure the disciplinary aspect of it, which is what is Madge, and Madge hates you talking about how he's a disciplinarian, right, and that he's a hard taskmaster. But I think that's part of the allure of bringing Madge there, because that playing squad, it feels like it's a bit loose at the moment. It needs to be maybe reined in a bit.
Well, the good thing in that is, we look at Madge's NRL career, and then he went over to, the Test coach for New Zealand, and then he went to Origin. The thing is about when you get to that coaching at that level, you don't actually need to get necessarily the best out of the players. You just need to bring them together as a group. You don't need to bring all the strategy. You don't need to, these guys, and that's the same as with the Broncos. When you look at that roster, it's not like a West Tigers roster where you need to get over there and you need to build the roster. You need to bring there's all these moving parts to get a result from this team. They obviously have got the roster there. They just need someone to come in. It's almost like a rep roster and just bring those guys together, get them on the same page, and then get them humming along.